the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare Food and Nutrition Network. And our title today is Why You Should Promote Veganuary at Your Workplace and How to Plan Ahead for Success. I have no financial disclosures. As you will see as I go through, I perhaps have some disclosures in terms of my personal perspective on food and how I've come to this work, which I'll kind of share as we go along. I think it's important to acknowledge that we all are very much molded by our experiences and by what we've read and what we've done and how we've grown up, and food is a particular one for that. So I am vegan and have been since 2017, and obviously that influences how I approach food because veganism is an ethical choice. But what I'll be focusing on today is very much the health benefits of a plant-based diet, the sustainability benefits, and very practical stuff around how we bring all the benefits of plant-based nutrition to our patients and our colleagues by running Veganuary at our workplace. So that will be the focus today. Just a reminder of how the networks work. So our goal is to inspire, empower, and transform through collaboration and networking. We do have a code of conduct, and really this is just about being part of a community and respecting differing viewpoints. And again, food can be a emotive issue, so I hope we'll all be kind to each other as we get into the discussion. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to cover why you should promote Veganuary at your workplace, and I'm going to briefly talk about climate change. Many of you here, I'm sure, will already be well versed in this, but it's good just to have a grounding of where we are. So here are the concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere over a number of years. I was born in 1982, and at that time, the concentration was 341.48. I went vegetarian in 2004, having been to university and been started from very much an omnivore and very sort of classic Western diet. In 2004, having had some further information provided and some of my views challenged, I went vegetarian and was very happy with that. And then in 2017, I went vegan. And at that point, our CO2 concentration in the atmosphere had gone up quite dramatically to 406, and it continues to rise. And the consequences of this are global warming. These graphs are very recent. They were just published a week ago. And it's quite frightening data. You can see the red line is significantly higher than any of the previous years. We breached 2 degrees warming in November. Now, that's not a sustained rise in temperature, but it is where we're heading if we don't change. And 2 degrees of warming is not something this planet can comfortably survive. When we think about climate change, some of it can be quite abstract. We often have pictures of polar bears, or we have these kind of graphs with temperatures. But climate change is absolutely everywhere. This is just from the last 10 days. These are just, whenever I do a talk like this, I just go onto a number of websites and I just find a recent story, and they're everywhere. It's really easy. It used to be, you'd have to search through, but now every news site has it on their front pages and also has a climate change section, because this is everywhere. It's daily news. This is droughts. This is concerts being cancelled because fans are passing out and being hospitalized. This is people not being able to have their basic human rights respected in prisons. This is fires and storms. So you don't have to look far. And this is the reality of our present and increasingly our future. So why is Veganuary part of this conversation? Well, animal agriculture is a huge contributor to greenhouse gases and to other factors which contribute to the destruction of our environment and our livable planet. So animal farming is responsible for at least 14.5% of greenhouse gases, directly, indirectly, even more. 90% of Amazon deforestation. That's mostly for crops which are fed to animals, so particularly soya, which could be fed to humans, those crops, but instead is fed to animals. There's also deforestation in order for grazing. This is a very inefficient way to get calories or protein. And so the problem is it requires massive destruction of the living world and contributes hugely to our warming world. And this is a really interesting study, which I'd really recommend a read. What this looks at is, well, what if we did a really great job and we eliminated fossil fuels and we had a completely renewable energy sector, where would we be? Because there's quite good progress being made on that front, not quick enough, but we are getting there. Well, the sad truth is, if that's what we did, we would still not be within a 1.5 degrees warming limit, which is the Paris Agreement, as to what would be kind of an acceptable limit that would not lead to catastrophic changes in the way we live. If we don't address food, we cannot keep within 1.5. Our global food system emissions will stop us. So you can see here some different things that need to change within the health system. So if business as usual, we're on course to breach 2 degrees. If we are able to increase yields of crops, if we're able to massively reduce waste, because that's a huge problem in the food system, if we're able to shift to more healthy calories, have a higher efficiency in terms of what we're able to deliver to people, and have a plant-rich diet, then we have a really good chance to then be within 1.5. So while there's lots of things going on in the background which we can't personally influence in terms of the energy sector, what we can do is we can change our diets and we can influence others to do the same, so that we can increase our proportion of plant-based foods in our diet, and we can massively reduce climate emissions. And the important thing to remember is that the amount of CO2 that we saw on that graph is not linearly related to the effects. So it's not a straightforward one-to-one ratio that a little bit more CO2 has a little bit more impact. We have these things called tipping points, and they are points at which a certain threshold is exceeded and then catastrophic events occur that are kind of feedback cycles, feedback loops. So if we get to 2 degrees, then the West Antarctic ice sheet will collapse, and that will have many, many knock-on effects. If we get to 4 degrees, then really I think it's game over, because there's so many consequences that will then further lead to further emissions. And a lot of this is to do with, for example, if the ice sheets collapse and there's a lot of melting, then there's a lot more methane and CO2 trapped in those glaciers. So the fact that we reach this tipping point means that then we have a massive upsurge in further global warming, which further leads to further problems. So these thresholds are meaningful and are really worth aiming for still now. And there is still the capability to turn this around. So if we are able to halve emissions by 2030, then we can stay within 2, certainly, and perhaps 1.5. But at the moment, we're not on course to do that. And a large part of that is the food system. And this is quite a dramatic statement from a very recent this year paper, which again tries to look at climate change not in the context of kind of something very abstract, but really to look at the human impact. And this is really, my major motivation for working on this, is that there are already people who are harmed and are dying from climate change now. Many of those at the moment are in the global south, and we don't always see them. But if warming reaches or exceeds 2 degrees, mainly richer humans, and this comes from the Oxfam report out very recently that showed there's huge inequality in climate emissions, and the top 1% are responsible for most of our emissions, will be responsible for killing roughly 1 billion mainly poorer humans. And that's a very strong statement, not one I've seen before in a scientific paper, but this is the reality of where we are. And our food system is broken in many ways. So I'm not going to cover all of these things today, but if you've seen either me or Shireen speak previously, there's a lot to cover in terms of the problems with our current food system. So there's a lot of advantages, a lot of gain. If we just think about healthcare, none of us want to live through another pandemic. None of us want to live through an era of antibiotic resistance. We are storing up those problems in large part from the food system. And there are many other issues that we could talk about. So really, this is a perfect storm, but we do have the opportunity to act, and many people already are. There are some really fantastic campaigns in the public sector already. So you can see here, pro-veg school plates, plant-based universities, plant-based councils. And in fact, in the US, a place you wouldn't necessarily think might lead on these things, in New York, there's amazing work by the mayor there, introducing plant-based by default into New York hospitals, driven by his experience of reversing his own diabetes through plant-based diets and seeing the advantages for his community. So real commitment to health outcomes primarily, but with the additional benefits on the climate. So does Veganuary make a difference? This is one opportunity for us all to look at our diets and to come together to really try and change it. Change is hard, so doing it as a group is much more successful. And actually, just the campaign itself has quite a big impact. People take part mainly to help animals, to protect the environment and improve their health. So all of those three motivators are really important. There's lots of impact from Veganuary. There's a film out actually recently called, oh, I can't remember now, someone's gonna have to remind me, It'll Never Catch On, I think it's called, looking at the founders of Veganuary and their story, and people thought it would never be successful and it would die a death. But 10 years on, and it has huge reach and huge impact, and you'll see it everywhere in the media and in restaurants. And just if people only commit to Veganuary and do that 1 month without any animal products, 6.2 million litres of water are saved, 103,000 tonnes of CO2, equivalent to 1.2 million flights from London to Paris, and on and on. 3.4 million animals spared from a lifetime of suffering. So just that 1 month has an impact, but of course, the bigger impact is hopefully how people change their views and change their habits, and that's what it's all about. So why the workplace challenge? For staff, there can be some really great advantages. Doing this together can be a really fantastic team building activity. It's fun. You meet people across your workplace you wouldn't necessarily have known before. There are huge benefits on a personal level for both physical and mental health, to reducing ultra-processed food, to reducing animal intake, and to really focusing on a health promoting diet and to learning more about nutrition in a fun way. Most workplaces have sustainability plans, and food is often small print or missing entirely. So this is a really great opportunity to bring this up and to highlight the importance of food as part of any sustainability strategy. And also most healthcare workplaces have some kind of strategy related to inequality. And again, inequalities are to a large part driven by factors related to poverty, and diet being one of those. So within our patients and within our staff, poor health is often diet driven, and so it's a really great thing to focus on that for staff wellbeing. But of course, the biggest reason to do Veganuary yourself and at your workplace is the ripple effect, and that is within yourself and also in those around you. So if you are wanting to have a really positive conversation with somebody about diet change, the worst time to do that is while you're sat at dinner and they are eating a very unhealthy animal-based food, because at that point their psychology will protect them from any kind of attack, and so they won't be able to have a really great conversation. However, if people are doing Veganuary and they've already made a switch for that month and are eating plant-based and are enjoying it, they're much more open to conversations around long-term impacts of dietary change and the advantages. And by being very positive about the delicious food that you can eat and all the fun you can have, then this has a really great impact. We're all very social people, so we like to be part of a club that looks like it's really fun. So now to the practical stuff. Hopefully you're convinced this is a good idea. How to plan ahead for success. So I am extremely lucky to work at King's with Shireen Kassam, who many of you know is the founder of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. And together we have run Veganuary for 2 years now, and also No Meat May. So we've acquired some experience, which I just wanted to share with you today. The kind of things we have done is to try and personalize the Veganuary campaign to our hospital. So in terms of planning ahead for success, I will go through kind of month by month the sorts of things that I think would be a good idea. But I just wanted to give some examples of some of the materials and some of the things we've done in the past that I think have been successful. So each year, the Veganuary team, who are amazing, produce a whole load of campaign materials. And each year I essentially adapt them. So these images and the slogans are all from the Veganuary team. And each year I kind of adapt them into some posters, and we have them around the hospital, obviously with our logos on. And we have a link to sign up just to the Veganuary campaign to get the emails. And also we have a WhatsApp group where we share on a more kind of one-to-one or group setting recipes and nutritional info and nutrition information and support. And it's really nice to kind of make it specific to your place of work, and also to highlight the kind of really key reasons for doing Veganuary. And then the other thing to think about is, how can you get the message out? And there are lots of different options, and I'm not suggesting you do all of these, but you might want to pick one or two things that you do in order to get information to people and to highlight all of the great benefits of doing Veganuary. And this might include things around the comms team, presentations, emails of facts and recipes, speaking to different networks. Often workplaces will have other networks, so the sustainability network being a really key one, but things like the women's network can be really fantastic, or the faith-based network. There are lots of options. I really would recommend trying to make this fun. No one wants to be beaten around the head with all of the doom and gloom. Some kind of important facts are helpful to share, but really this is about saying, you know what, you've never tried tofu, here are 10 ways to cook it that's really delicious. Oh, you really love burgers, well, here's a plant-based alternative that is still better for the environment and better for your health. Why don't you try it and let us know? So it's about a lot of positivity as well as information to help motivate people. And these are the sorts of things that we do. So on the WhatsApp group, each day in Veganuary, I share a question and answer. So at the beginning of the day, we share the question, and at the end of the day, the answer. And again, this is just to try and get people thinking, get them kind of testing themselves on their knowledge and sharing additional resources. So again, this is, you don't have to do this every day, but you might pick a few facts that you kind of share during the month. So really useful way of getting people to interact. And the other thing that we've done is to create a cookbook. Now, this was done with some help from a very wonderful team member at Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. So I did not do all the design on this, but we did get staff to share their favorite plant-based recipes. Most of these staff are not vegan, they're not plant-based, they wouldn't identify as that, but everyone has a plant-based recipe that they love. And it gives staff a really lovely way to share something of their background and their heritage. We have ingredients from all over the world because our staff are from all over the world. And again, this is part of the team building and sharing, and it's a really positive thing to do. So it doesn't have to be this fancy, but even people just sharing their favorite recipes is a really lovely thing to try and collect. Okay, so I'm just going to go through month by month the sorts of things that I think is useful to do in terms of planning for success. We're at the end of November now, so all you really have to do in November is sign up, but we'll talk a bit more about that. And then what to do in December, getting ready, and then Veganuary itself. So now I think the time is to sign up for Veganuary itself and the Workplace Challenge at your workplace. There's some really great information on the Veganuary website. Read up on some key facts. You do not have to be an expert on either climate change or nutrition or really any of the above, but a few key facts on the really great benefits of moving more and more towards a plant-based diet is very helpful, so that you can increase your confidence in having conversations with people. Think about what the key messages are for the audience that you're targeting, and just have a few things that you're able to kind of say that are going to be persuasive. Most important, find some people to help. I would not do any of this without the help of Shireen and others in Plant Powered Kings, because this is not a one-person thing, and it's much more fun to do it as a team. So just a small team, even if it's just 2 of you, but if you can have 3 or 4, it just means you can share the work. You'll have different contacts at your workplace, you'll have different skills that you can bring. So definitely think about that, and get together over a coffee and just think about what you want to do, however big or small. It might just be that you just want to have one shared lunch, and that's all you're going to do. Or it might be that you want to do something much bigger. And depending on your workplace, you might have some key people that you can involve that actually can help. That might be the wellbeing team or the comms team or some friends. And starting in November and into December, it's worth just contacting key people to say, we're planning to do this. Any thoughts? How can you help? The other thing is that Plant-Based Health Professionals UK has some really excellent resources and information. So in terms of reading up on nutrition, that's my go-to. So in December, which is quite soon, what I would say is the key thing is to create and find resources. There's tons out there already, so you do not have to start things and make things for yourself, but finding the resources things like websites that have lists of films that people might want to watch about food, or really great cookbooks, or websites that have great nutrition information. The other thing to do is to start telling people that you're going to be doing Veganuary at your workplace, and then get the posters up ready to show to people, and with key information, particularly on if you're going to do a talk, a grand round, or some kind of webinar, and if you're going to have a stall, which is always really nice because people can then come and talk to you. Trying to motivate people to join you. So I'm constantly encouraging my colleagues to join me. I've already started my Veganuary campaign in my office, and I've already got 3 yeses, so I'm working on the rest of them. So highlighting the benefits to them as individuals and also the planet. There is also sometimes helpful to add a competition element. So if you say, well, actually everyone in the pharmacy department in this place is doing Veganuary, why aren't you guys? Sometimes that can be helpful. Or, oh, don't you think you can go 30 days? Oh, you know, I'll bet you can't. So sometimes that can help depending on how people are motivated. And then the other thing to start doing throughout December is to just start sharing some facts or resources, ingredient swaps, kind of thinking about what the common myths are around things like, oh, won't it be protein deficient? Definitely not. Which nutrition, which vitamins do you need? So just arming yourself with a little bit of information so that you can have these conversations in a positive way and really encourage people. And then January is obviously the main event. So the key thing in January is to just be a real cheerleader. That's really the entire job, is to really be really positive about the impact that people are having for their own health and for the planet, to really be positive about all participation. And if people are struggling, just be there to be supportive and give advice, reinforce all the benefits, share kind of books and articles and films so that people can keep motivated. And the other thing is really to role model. And I think that's probably the most important job in January, is to share what you're buying, what you're making, some favorite recipes. If you go out for dinner and you have a really great meal, just share, and really just share the joy of eating the rainbow, which is what we should be doing. And then in February, you get to have a rest. And really the important thing here is to celebrate your own success and your colleagues' success. And share the impact. So Veganuary will again produce stats, but it's really worth sharing back to people what a huge impact this has, and how they're part of a bigger change. And then get some feedback on what was helpful and what didn't work so well. And then think about, actually, hopefully you'll have such a positive experience that you'll be planning ahead for No Meat May, and then Veganuary 2025, which will be even bigger and better. So that's what I think is useful to plan ahead. Clearly, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and so I have now developed a number of resources. And because vegans are the kindest people, here are some demonstrations of some lovely, kind vegans. I am very happy to help. So if you scan this QR code, you can just complete a few questions. It's 9 questions. And if on the question 9 is, please leave your email address. And if so, I will then send you in the first week of December a link to a folder which has a lot of what I've been talking about already. So lists of films, lists of useful websites, some key facts to share, because I realize that having done this a couple of years, I've done a lot of the work already, and the whole point here is to share and to network and to be a help to each other. So please do scan the QR code and follow that link. And that's it really.